right? So that is where, along with the recognition of the problem, in Brewer's view, the government also would try to look at the possible solutions, the way possibly, the issue at hand can be addressed, right? So that is where, estimation, that is the second stage that becomes important. So government would try to look at that which one of the policy alternatives can best achieve its objective. Now, if we look at the example, that I have referred to, right? The overall objective in this specific case could be that the individuals, they should be free in terms of exercise of their choice, which may be a condition for life with dignity. I mean, that's what the Constitution declares to ensure its citizens, right? Life with dignity. That is something which was, I think, as law students, you must be knowing the Menka case, right? Menka case. So, that was very, right to life, right? So, whether it is simply right to life or right to life with dignity, right? So that is something which is part of the, past developments, wherein it was recognized that, the individual should have the right to life with dignity, right? So if you look at that, in this specific case, the objective of the government would be to ensure that, the right to education could be the fundamental factor in terms of ensuring a life with dignity to individuals. So that's where this becomes the objective, larger goal that the government has before it, right? And it is towards that purpose, towards meeting that objective, that the government would make a policy. Now, if you look at the government, then the government is certainly not going to do that in a spur of the moment, that okay, fine, this is what is to be done. No, the government decision making process is a complex task, a complex thing, right? So that is where, at the stage of estimation, the government would look at all the plausible alternatives, and that's where cost and benefit analysis would happen, right? And as I told you, that, government would look at both material costs as well as normative costs. At the same time, government may also look at that what political benefits may come to the government along with this. So eventually, I mean, this cannot be denied that even in democracies, the various political parties who are in power, they make policies with a view that, again, they seek re-election, right? And that is what is a very important factor in terms of making of the policies of the government, right? So that's where the government would look at all the costs which would be involved in the overall policy making process, and the likely benefits that is likely to come. Okay, so that's where, the government would look at the alternatives, maybe, a few alternatives which I have just narrated. Maybe they would be found to be not so effective in the eyes of the decision makers, right? Now, there may be individuals, there may be sections which may differ with the government, but as far as the government is concerned, government would have its own methods of looking at the various alternatives which may be a possible solution to the problem at hand. So that's what happens at the level of estimation. Government would look at the, likely costs and the possible benefits that may come by opting a particular policy from among the many alternatives that would be presented to the government. That's what happens at the level of estimation. And the next stage is that, after giving due consideration to all those alternatives and making an assessment of the cost and benefits involved, right? As I told you, costs both normative and likely political costs, and benefits both, right? Within the larger value system of the society, and the larger political benefits that may come to the government would select one of them as the possible policy choice, right? As the possible policy choice. So, as the possible policy choice, right? So that is where government thought that, instead of making some any other arrangement than providing direct financial benefit to the concerned students, or going for some public private partnership. Government would do good if it makes a constitutional provision by ensuring that now this is a fundamental right of the individual, and no government in future can deny an individual this right. So that's where the government would select this as its policy alternative. So that's where the selection stage comes. So government has selected from among the alternatives, right? So selection, right? That's what is there. Then implementation part. Now it would be implemented. So under implementation part, various state governments would, in turn, bring in legislation wherein the students till the age of 14 would be ensured free education, right? So that's where the financial provisions would be made. That is where funds would be allocated. That is where agencies and institutions would be identified, through which the policies are to be implemented. That's where implementation part would happen. See, please, again, try to understand that the point I was trying to make earlier, right? So now government has tried to address one specific problem, that is simply right to education. But look the complex process that is involved in the overall policy making process, right? So once the constitutional amendment has happened, then there are related regulations, there are related rules which are to be put in place. Finances have to be mobilized, institutions are to be identified, the various stages are to be ensured through which the policy would be implemented. All these things are required to be ensured at the level of implementation part. So that's what would be the fourth stage in Brewer's understanding. So the policy would be implemented, right? As I told you that in the light of the constitutional amendment, the respective state government, since education is a state subject as well, right? So that is where the respective states, they would put in their legislation and in place, and to ensure that how this fundamental right can be now ensured to the students, to every young boy and girl who have not attained the age of 14, right? So implementation part. Now next would be the evaluation part, right? Now evaluation again in a brewer's understanding is a very important aspect. So once the policy has been implemented, the government is likely to assess its outcome, that whether the intended objectives have been achieved or not, right? So intended objectives are that there should be higher enrollment in various schools. And these would be indicators, right? These would be indicators to understand that as far as the right to education is concerned, the benefit of right to education as a fundamental right is now reaching to the public at large. So that's where the government would make an assessment, and this assessment would be made through the means of dedicated studies, which would look at, say, for instance, whether there are similar cases or problems again occurring or not, right? So if there is a decline in the nature or number of such cases, or if there are no cases, then certainly the government would understand that now it is possibly moving in a direction where this problem is being addressed, so the policy is going in the right direction. Or say, for instance, there is a higher enrollment of students in various primary and secondary schools, right? So that is where the government would understand that now the policy and the funds which were allocated for the implementation of the policy, now they are going in the right direction, right? So if the indicators would ensure that intended objectives of the policy are being met with, then the government would be of the view that let the policy continue. So policy should be continued, policy would continue, right? Policy would continue. Or if the assessment suggests that there are certain problems, then the government may decide to bring about mid-course changes. So maybe the government would identify other institutions. The government may decide to involve more and more private players, right? So the government may think that there are some other related issues which are required to be addressed only then the benefits of right to education can be enjoyed by every section of the society, right? So that is where we, if you recall, that there would be some changes. Say for instance, especially in the state of Bihar, where students would be provided with bicycles, right? Or overall security condition, especially for the female students, that would be another related factor that would be given consideration to by the government, right? So every state government would make or the union government would make an assessment of the situation, and may think that what are the other related changes which may be required to give effect to the policy, to meet the intended objectives which was originally intended in the policy, right? And finally, the termination part means that maybe one stage would come wherein the government would think that now the larger objectives for which the policy was put in place, that has been achieved. So it is at that stage that the government may decide to discontinue the policy, or to continue the policy in a different shape or under a different name, or to merge the policy with other existing or ongoing policies of the government, right?